Hello, and welcome to the webinar for the team-wide session 3. This session will cover empathy and culture. This web series is brought to you by the Minnesota Department of Human Services and the university's Institute on Community Integration. It was intended to be shared with you at our remaining in-person team-wide sessions, but those were canceled due to the COVID outbreak. So your team at the University of Minnesota has divided the information up into multiple smaller sessions. This one today is about 20 minutes of information. It's intended for application as a team. So what we'll be missing with this virtual lesson is that opportunity to complete the exercise with others. Throughout the presentation, there will be times when the trainer will ask you to pause the video to have a reflection or possibly do an activity. Listening to the information can be really great, but it can never replace the rich experience of discussing what you're learning with your colleagues. We encourage you to work with your internal colleagues in some fashion. For example, have a virtual meeting and go through the session together, or create a small group, or even pair up with a coworker. Your presenter today is Larry Tobrach. Larry is a person-centered thinking trainer, a person-centered thinking coach trainer, and a person-centered mentor. Thank you, and enjoy the webinar.
Thanks, Jet, and welcome everyone to this session. As indicated, we're going to be discussing empathy and cultural responsiveness in this session. But before getting into this particular training, I want to be able to review some of the information about universal positive social strategies as just a reminder. So the universal positive social strategies includes 4 components: encouraging and building relationships, empathy and cultural responsiveness, mindfulness and well-being, and organization and environment. These components are part of the positive social strategies, which can be described visually in this manner. Each of the 4 circles represents a literature base that creates the context for positive social environments. Skills for building relationships and effective communication combines person-centered thinking and function-based thinking curriculum as it relates to interactions between people. The building skills and encouraging empathy results in the ability to be more culturally responsive. And we know that cultural responsiveness is its own area of work in our cohort model, both for staff and for the people we support. Mindfulness is the ability for people to learn to be in the moment, to connect with our environment and those around us. And wellness is an important issue that helps staff and the people we support to be able to have an optimal quality of life. We need to feel well and work on our health and mindfulness, and it's a strategy that helps us to create wellness and to reduce stress. The larger circle represents the work we do as a group of people to create a positive, proactive environment. This is the collective workforce and organizational work we do to make sure we build services and supports. For example, we support community mapping. We teach conflict resolution and problem solving, and we use matching to pair staff and people supported. Within this larger organizational environment, groups of people behave in ways that create a positive or negative context. And organizational behavior management and workforce issues are addressed in this area. Each of these 4 areas have a set of evidence-based practices and research supporting our work. We don't teach every evidence-based practice that can be used in organizations in our cohort models. However, we do want to make sure that there is a clear understanding that to be effective, organizations need to seek out the skills that will help create a positive environment. We are teaching organizations to identify their unique strengths and needs and to seek out training that meets those needs. This is a different way of training. We are teaching problem solving because we cannot possibly teach everything that every organization needs. These conceptual work areas speak to ourselves as individuals. They contribute to building relationships, and they contribute to collective organizational work. Therefore, this model speaks to issues beyond interactions between two people. It is a roadmap for articulating what we need to be our best selves, how to become more aware of our environment so that we can create positive and culturally responsive communities. And they help us build environments that are positive and support complex social interactions across groups of people. So let's take a look at empathy and cultural responsiveness component. Building skills for encouraging empathy results in the ability to be more culturally responsive. And cultural responsiveness is an important area of work in our cohort model, both for staff and the people we support. Let's start by taking a deeper look at the concept of empathy. We're going to take a look at a video by Brené Brown, which contrasts empathy and sympathy.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no. You want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with "at least." And we do it all the time, because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
So if you're with a group, please pause the video now and share your thoughts about what you learned from that video. There are a number of good things that we can take away from this talk, but for me, the things that I really want to remember are what Brené said about sympathy versus empathy. And what she said was sympathy drives disconnection and empathy drives connection. And connection is what makes something better and what happens when we truly listen and are empathetic to others. Another way of looking at it was from this author, Harper Lee, in her book, To Kill a Mockingbird. She had said, you never really understand another person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb inside of his skin and walk around in it. Empathy is about listening for understanding and being able to be with the person in the moment. We don't necessarily have the same experience as the person, but we may be able to relate to the feeling the person is experiencing. Empathy is about connecting. Many of us struggle with being empathetic. To a great extent, the difficulty comes from our inability to accept people as they are without judging them. Far too often, we judge others, and we must stop judging others, and rather we need to accept them as they are. Another difficulty is that many of us, particularly those of us who are parents, we assume that we know what is best for someone. When we try to fix someone by telling them what's best for them, we're likely going to get resistance and possibly resentment in return. We need to stop fixing others. Instead, we need to support them in what they want in their lives. We need to stop looking at things from our perspective, and instead we need to be able to look at things from the perspective of the person that we're supporting. We need to recognize emotions and acknowledge that having emotions is part of being human. And we need to be able to support people to help them learn to react constructively to those emotions. Finally, we need to manage our emotions so that our emotions don't negatively influence situations. When we do these things, we'll be able to better listen and support others. Being empathetic fits very well with the second topic of this session, which is cultural responsiveness. What comes to mind when you see or hear the word culture? If you're working in a group right now, please pause the presentation and do a round and have everyone say what comes to mind for them when they hear or see the word culture. Most people, when asked what culture means to them, they'll focus on the macro level categories, such as race, religion, country of origin, economic status, gender, etc. Most of you have probably had some type of training on cultural competence, so you might have heard the definition of culture such as this. Culture is that complex whole which includes language, beliefs, priorities, and values. Simply put, culture is the learned and shared behavior of a community of interacting human beings. Culture is not about the color of your skin or your country of origin or whether you're male or female or rich or poor. Culture is about the things we believe and the things we say and do. Another definition of culture is this, and I really like it just simply because of how it's shaped. A shared system of meanings, beliefs, values, and behaviors through which experience is interpreted and carried out. Culture is relative, it's learned, it's collective, it changes over time, and complex responsive process is involved in culture. Cultural competence is the ability and willingness to do a number of things. And in our work, it's very important for us to be culturally competent so that we can understand where the people we support are coming from. We need to be able to understand that everyone has their beliefs and experiences that guide how they respond to situations. We also need to be aware of our own personal biases that cause us to judge others and possibly treat others unfairly. And we need to celebrate the opportunity to share the diversity all around us. So you might be asking, how does this fit with empathy? Well, the answer is this. When we practice empathy, we need to listen and not judge. and we need to meet people where they are, which fits perfectly with the need to be culturally responsive. The National Center for Culturally Responsive Educational System defines culturally responsiveness as the ability to learn from and relate respectfully with the people of your own culture as well as those from other cultures. Simply put, this means relating respectfully with all people. A similar concept to cultural responsiveness is cultural humility. Let's watch this video on cultural humility as presented by Juliana Mosley.
Namaste. Perhaps you are wondering why I just greeted you with a bow, a curtsy, and a namaste welcome. As many are aware, in other countries, cultures, and social engagements, these gestures would be accepted and even expected when meeting someone or ending an encounter. The bow, used in East Asian countries such as China, Japan, and Thailand, is often commonly used at the beginning and ending of a martial arts competition. The curtsy would be the appropriate gesture if a lady had the opportunity to meet the Queen of England, and also for dancers to say thank you to an audience at the end of their performance. The namaste welcome is used in the Hindu culture and religion, and also at the end of a common yoga class. And it literally translates to the divine in me bows to the divine in you. These gestures highlight the concept of humility, literally being able to bow to the culture, persona, and the position of someone else. Yet for many of us, Americans that is, we would struggle with the concept of humbling ourselves. We would not go as far as to say, I'm superior, but we definitely don't believe that we're less than. So it begs the question that if I humble myself, am I by default saying that I'm less than or giving power to someone else? Allow me to offer you a counter perspective this evening. Let's think about the physical posture of being able to bow and curtsy. It actually takes physical strength in one's back and knees to be able to do such. Even for me, I would have to have a good weather day, not including today, where the twins, good old Arthur and Rydas, don't bother me to be able to do a proper curtsy. Thus, to yield to the concept of cultural humility means that you are so self-aware that it's okay to have the introduction of another culture, someone else's viewpoint, because you're going to be grounded in who you are. In retrospect, I find that I had one of my greatest humility experiences during my senior year of high school, the spring of 1992. I know I don't look that old. Anyway, so I was attending the Indiana Academy for Mathematics, Science, and Humanities. This is a special boarding school for academically gifted juniors and seniors. And due to our advanced curriculum and our college prep focus, we were offered foreign language courses not typical to high schools at that time, such as Russian, German, Japanese, and Chinese. Me being who I am, I figured if a quarter of the world was speaking Chinese, I needed to be in the majority. So after nearly 2 years and learning almost 300 plus characters, our teacher decided that we needed to have a true cultural immersion experience. And by the way, that's enough characters to actually be conversational. So I know what you're thinking. We went to China. No, school didn't have that kind of money. But she gave us the next best opportunity to our rural Indiana location, Chinatown in Chicago. There you go. My classmates and I were extremely excited, the opportunity to use Mandarin for the first time with native speakers. So we spent most of the day walking around town, buying souvenirs, of course, and taking in the sights. Finally, we decided to have a little lunch and eat what we thought was pretty authentic Chinese food. We sit down at the restaurant, we open the menu, and we're excited. We can actually read most of the characters. One by one, my classmates start to order their meals, and the waitress, you can tell that she was impressed through her smile and even a slight bow. I was the last one to place my order, trying to give myself more time to get my words together. But I got a very different response. After only 3 or 4 words, the waitress literally takes off running to the back of the restaurant. I look at my teacher and I ask her, did I say something wrong? For those who don't know, Chinese is a tonal language. Therefore, the meaning of a word changes based on one of the 4 tones. She assured me that my Chinese was fine, had no idea why the woman ran off. Just as we were finishing our conversation, the waitress comes back with what appears to be the entire kitchen staff. And she says to me in Mandarin to speak again. And so I finished placing my order. I can tell by the huge smiles and even the head nods that that great mystery had been revealed. Perhaps they were used to white Americans speaking their language, but I think I may have been the first Black person they ever saw speak Chinese. As a cultural diversity trainer, I have learned that this was truly one of my greatest cultural humility experiences. I didn't know then what I know now, but I had been spending about 2 years yielding who I was as a Black person, American, and native English speaker to learn and appreciate the culture, history, and language of China. I wanted so desperately to be a part and to be immersed in this wonderful culture. And so we have this concept that I realized that was really the pinnacle moment for me. The kitchen staff or the restaurant staff was impressed, perhaps even honored, that we as outsiders had learned their language. And I was trying so desperately to get it right. I wanted to pay honor to the country and the culture and the language that I had become so fond of. And so this type of cultural surrender and the increasing multicultural diversity in our society, I believe, is the foundation that led Doctors Melanie Turveloin and Jan Murray Garcia to develop the concept of cultural humility in 1998. These physicians were looking to develop a concept and a model that would be an extension or go beyond the limitations of cultural competency, but yet create a cultural framework that would help them to better serve their patients. Essentially, they realized they're the experts in medicine, but not the experts in culture of their patients. Yet they understood fundamentally that culture weighs heavily in someone's thoughts, their beliefs, their habits, and the choices that they will make for their life. You see, cultural competency is learned knowledge and also skill set that you need to manage cross-cultural relationships. But it actually can have some shortcomings and cause prejudice because the focus is heavily on what you learn and not necessarily looking at and evaluating your own personal experiences. Thus, cultural humility was created to be a process-oriented approach that takes into consideration who you are, your experiences, how you live the world, how you view the world through your own identities. Let's take me for an example this evening. I see the world through my lens of being a Black woman who's Christian, middle class, and heterosexual, to name a few. As a cultural diversity trainer, I've used the concept of cultural competency for many, many years. But I see cultural humility as an evolution of that work. Not to say that cultural competency is bad, but just that now we've taken it another step. And so what we've done is have that focus on who we are and then also being able to value what others bring to the proverbial table. And so let's evaluate these 2 schools of thought tonight. Cultural competency suggests that learning is finite, which means I can take a course, I can take a workshop, and learn about a group of people. So you may have someone say, hey, I understand Mexican Americans and their culture. Prior to my teaching in Houston, Texas, I took a cultural diversity workshop. Whereas cultural humility says that learning is infinite. We are lifelong learners who must critically self-evaluate. We must look at who we are, what we believe, and why based on our own experiences. And so I had the opportunity a couple years ago to do a follow-up training to an organization I had worked with previously, actually right here in Westchester. And at these day-long retreats, you know, we normally have food, nice little potluck, everybody brings something. And so there was a gentleman who brought a dish, which I fell in love with. I think I probably had 2 plates anyway. So, and what happened, I saw him and I said, hey, did your wife make that dish that she made the last time? Y'all already know, see? He said, my wife didn't make that, I did. And I thought, oh my goodness, how have I slipped into this gender norm? I immediately apologized, and then I used it as a teachable moment for our training session. But this is why it is so important to critically reflect and constantly self-evaluate. Even for me as a trainer, what happened? I was so influenced by social norms that I slipped right into one myself, even when I know it is culturally inappropriate. Number 2, cultural competency says that is concerned with book and learned knowledge, and that has power, which would mean that my certification as a diversity trainer takes precedence over my entire life experience of working with diverse cultures. Cultural humility, on the other hand, seeks to fix and challenge those power imbalances, recognizing, yes, who you are, but that we have to see everyone as a complex, multidimensional being who brings to the table their experiences, their culture, and their heritage. And this is demonstrated in the formation of a pearl. So you have a little granule of sand who loses its way from its friends, ends up slipping into an oyster. It's all of a sudden afraid and scared. This is a big foreign place, and I don't know where my people are. The oyster is saying, hey, what's going on? You're in there moving around, and I'm starting to itch. So it does what I call the shimmy shake, and it starts to release its nectar. This has 2 purposes. 1, it coats that granule of sand, providing a tight covering, making it feel a little bit more secure in this big foreign place. But it also stops the irritation because it no longer feels the little granule of sand moving around. And so essentially what happens is the oyster and the sand, they learn how to coexist. They share their power and they create something of beauty, a pearl. Finally, cultural competency is concerned with self-advocacy, where we might have a woman, for instance, who uses her personal connections to help elevate her career, instead of using the resources before her to help all of the women in her organization to collectively break the glass ceiling. Cultural humility then says, no, we want you to aspire to have partnerships so that you can learn about not only a group of people, but to be able to advocate for them as well. Realizing that we do not live in this diverse world alone and that we need everybody to be there. And so we saw this recently in the last couple of months with all of the instances of devastation. We had the hurricanes that plagued Houston, Miami, the Caribbean, and Puerto Rico, leaving thousands in waist-deep waters. No power, completely destroyed homes and all of their material possessions. Then you'll remember the hundreds of people running for their lives when all they were trying to do was enjoy a concert in Las Vegas. Or the complete neighborhoods burned down, leaving thousands homeless in Northern California. And even this week, a small Baptist church in Texas, a mass shooting, leaving 26 dead. Some of you right now are fighting back the tears and the overwhelming sense of emotion, even as we recall these events. But one thing that I want you to see and remember was all the images on television and in the social media of people doing whatever it took to save someone else. In those moments, their race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, political affiliation, and religion did not matter. It was the humanity of man that shined bright and caused someone to risk their life for someone else. There's even an image that stands very close in my mind that I love, and it's of an older white woman's face being held in the hands of a black woman. And I would like to think that she's saying to her, we will get through this together. And so you see, I offer you the opportunity to take the road to cultural humility, to position yourself and humble yourself so that you can learn best from others. As you do this, I hope that you will do the three things that we talked about. That you will, one, consider that learning is a lifelong process. Take your seat in that classroom. Be willing to learn from one another while sharing of yourself. I hope that you will do whatever is possible and in your power to shift and challenge those power imbalances in a way that allows us to live communally together in our diverse society. And then finally, to be able to advocate and partner with others in a way that we charge our systems and institutions to level the playing field so that equity becomes the norm and humanity is our most important identity. Namaste.
If you are in a group, please pause this presentation now and share your thoughts about the video that you just observed. Again, there's a lot of good information in this talk, and there are a few things that stand out for me. The first thing is that cultural competence is focused on learning about and interacting well with others, which is great, and it's something we should all strive to do. But cultural humility takes a step further and also focuses on who you are, your experiences, how you live, and how you view the world. Knowing your own culture helps better understand others. Learning about culture is an infinite, lifelong process, and we need to remember that everyone has their own beliefs and worldview. And finally, the thing I like most is her challenge to learn more about other cultures and work to level the playing field. And that last statement that she made, I think, is so powerful. We need to do this so that equity becomes the norm and humanity is our most important identity. I would encourage you all to take up that challenge. Additional resources for this topic and others can be found on the mnpsp.org website. I encourage you to check out the site and select the training materials tab at the top of the page, which will bring you to this page where you can access a variety of resources. I encourage you and your team to access these resources and use them as a guide for additional exercises and training. Also, if you're interested, there's an APBS conference next year to be held in Minneapolis. You can access the website to look for more information about this. And also next year, there will be a collaborators forum. And you can check that out as well. The date that is listed on this particular slide is not accurate, but there will be another collaborators forum next year. If you have questions regarding this information shared, please contact your consultants from the University of Minnesota. On behalf of the Minnesota Department of Human Services and the University of Minnesota Institute on Community Integration, we want to thank you for your patience, understanding, and continued commitment to person-centered practices in these uncertain times. Thank you for your time and for the great work that you do. Take care and stay healthy, everyone.